Welcome to Underwire History. By 1216, the Fifth Crusade had stalled on multiple fronts, leaving Pope Innocent III searching for a new strategy to revive it. The papacy was still reeling from the aftermath of the Fourth Crusade's sack of Constantinople in 1204, and the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II had renounced his oath to join the Fifth Crusade just months earlier. The Italian city-states, too, were at odds with one another. A long-standing feud between Genoa and Pisa was fueling tensions along the Mediterranean coast. Pope Innocent III saw an opportunity in this chaos. By brokering peace between the warring city-states, he hoped to secure their participation in the transport of troops and supplies for the Fifth Crusade. This plan had far-reaching implications if successful. It would not only bolster the crusading effort, but also shore up papal authority in Italy, where control was tenuous at best. The Pope's diplomatic efforts were driven by a mix of faith, pragmatism, and strategic calculation. As he navigated the complex web of alliances and rivalries between European powers, Innocent III sought to maximize the papacy's influence while minimizing conflict. As we explore this pivotal moment in history, it becomes clear that the stakes were high for the future of Christendom, and for the very institutions that would shape its destiny. Pope Innocent III travels to Perugia to try to settle the long feud between Genoa and Pisa, that both states might contribute to the transport of the Fifth Crusade. There, after a short illness, Innocent dies on July 16, unfolded through interacting constraints rather than one isolated trigger. Decision-makers operated within institutional limits, and each response narrowed the next available option. The evidence points to compounding risk rather than a single dramatic cause. That causal chain becomes clearer when incentives, governance, and timing are read together. Pope Innocent III's diplomatic efforts were driven by a mix of faith, pragmatism, and strategic calculation. As he navigated the complex web of alliances and rivalries between European powers, Innocent III sought to maximize the papacy's influence while minimizing conflict. By brokering peace between Genoa and Pisa, he hoped to secure their participation in the transport of troops and supplies for the Fifth Crusade. The plan had far-reaching implications if successful. It would not only bolster the crusading effort, but also shore up papal authority in Italy, where control was tenuous at best. In Perugia, Innocent III faced a delicate balancing act as he attempted to reconcile the warring city-states. His efforts were ultimately thwarted by a short illness that struck him down on July 16. The sudden death of Pope Innocent III in Perugia sent shockwaves throughout Europe, where his passing was seen as an unexpected blow to the papacy's authority. In the aftermath of Innocent's demise, the delicate balance he had been attempting to maintain between Genoa and Pisa began to unravel. With no clear successor to guide them, both city-states were left to their own devices, rekindling old rivalries and new tensions. The consequences of this power vacuum would be far-reaching, with implications for trade routes, maritime power, and ultimately the success of the Fifth Crusade. As the papacy scrambled to fill the void left by Innocent's passing, a bitter struggle for control emerged within the Curia itself. Rival factions began to jockey for position, each seeking to capitalize on the uncertainty surrounding Innocent's death and the future of the papal project. The stage was thus set for a period of intense competition and maneuvering among European powers, as they sought to exploit the weaknesses created by Innocent's sudden passing. Modern relevance reshaped what decision-makers could do next, because each institutional response changed the incentives facing the next actor. The papal curia, once a bastion of stability and authority, was now in disarray, its leadership fragmented and ineffective. As rival factions vied for control, trade routes and maritime power began to shift in favor of the more cunning and adaptable city-states, particularly Genoa. The Fifth Crusade, already struggling to gain momentum, faltered further as the papacy's weakened authority led to a decline in crusader recruitment and financing. In this environment of uncertainty and competition, new actors emerged to challenge the traditional power structures, including the rise of a young and ambitious figure, Boniface VIII. Boniface, a member of the Savelli family from Rome, would go on to become one of the most influential popes in history, known for his shrewd diplomacy and tactical maneuvering. He navigated the complex web of alliances and rivalries with great skill, forging new bonds between city-states and securing key concessions from European monarchs. Boniface's ascension marked a turning point in the struggle for control within the Curia, as he would eventually supplant the rival faction led by Rinaldo Conti. This shift in power dynamics had far-reaching consequences, not only for the papacy but also for the broader European landscape, influencing the course of trade, diplomacy, and even military campaigns. The stage was set for a new era of competition and cooperation among European powers, as they sought to adapt to the changing circumstances created by Boniface's rise to power. With Boniface's ascension, traditional institutions such as the monastery of Monte Cassino began to lose influence as their connections to the Curia were severed. The rise of Boniface VIII marked a significant escalation in the competition for control within the papacy, as he sought to consolidate his power through strategic alliances and reforms. The city-states, particularly Florence and Venice, took advantage of the instability to expand their territories and secure valuable trade agreements. The weakening of the papacy's authority led to a crisis of legitimacy, with many questioning the moral basis for crusading efforts. Boniface VIII responded by issuing a series of papal bulls aimed at reasserting the Curia's influence over European politics and theology. The bulls outlined a vision for a unified Christendom under the leadership of the Pope, which would be enforced through military campaigns and ecclesiastical reforms. This program of reform had significant implications for the role of monarchs in Europe, as Boniface VIII sought to limit their power and increase his own influence over the continent. The stage was set for a confrontation between the papacy and secular powers, with far-reaching consequences for the balance of power in Europe. The central event that unfolded during this period was the struggle for control within the papacy, as Boniface VIII sought to consolidate his power through strategic alliances and reforms. A key decision made by Boniface was to ally himself with the powerful Colonna family, who had significant influence over the city of Rome. This alliance provided Boniface with a crucial advantage in the competition for power within the Curia, allowing him to bypass traditional institutions such as the monastery of Monte Cassino. However, this move also created tension between Boniface and other factions within the papacy, particularly those aligned with the rival Orsini family. As Boniface's influence grew, he began to implement reforms aimed at increasing his control over European politics and theology. One notable example was the appointment of a new bishop for the city of Naples, who was closely tied to the Colonna family and loyal only to Boniface. This move sparked outrage among those who saw it as an attempt by Boniface to undermine the traditional authority of the papacy. The crisis deepened when Boniface issued a series of papal bulls that effectively limited the power of monarchs in Europe, leading many to question his legitimacy as a leader of Christendom. This decision was not taken lightly and had significant implications for the balance of power on the continent. As tensions escalated between the papacy and secular powers, Boniface VIII continued to assert his authority through military campaigns and ecclesiastical reforms. The consequences of these actions would be far-reaching, leading to a period of conflict and upheaval that would shape the course of European history for generations to come. Boniface's alliance with the Colonna family led to a significant shift in the balance of power within the papacy. The powerful Orsini family, who had long been rivals of the coloners, began to form alliances with other factions in an effort to counter Boniface's influence. This created a complex web of allegiances and rivalries that would shape the course of European politics for years to come. The appointment of bishops loyal only to Boniface sparked outrage among those who saw it as an attempt to undermine traditional authority within the papacy. This led to increased tensions between the papacy and secular powers, who began to question Boniface's legitimacy as a leader of Christendom. The issue came to a head when Boniface VIII issued a series of papal bulls that effectively limited the power of monarchs in Europe. These documents, known as the Unam Sanctum and Ausculta Fidei, sparked widespread controversy and debate among scholars and leaders across the continent. Monarchs such as King Philip IV of France began to view Boniface's actions as a challenge to their authority, leading them to seek ways to limit his power. In 1302, Philip launched a campaign against Boniface, accusing him of heresy and attempting to undermine his authority. The consequences of these actions were far-reaching, leading to a period of conflict and upheaval that would shape the course of European history for generations to come. The papacy, once a powerful institution with unparalleled influence over European politics, was now facing significant challenges to its authority. Boniface's efforts to assert his authority through military campaigns and ecclesiastical reforms had created a power vacuum in Europe, which various factions began to fill. This led to the rise of new powers and the decline of traditional institutions such as the Holy Roman Empire. The governance consequences of Boniface's actions were significant, leading to a re-evaluation of the role of the papacy in European politics. The era that followed would be marked by increased conflict between secular powers and the papacy, as well as the rise of new forms of governance and authority. The complex web of allegiances and rivalries created by Boniface's alliance with the Colonna family had significant consequences for the governance of Christendom. The Orsini family, who had long been rivals of the Colonners, began to form alliances with other factions in an effort to counter Boniface's influence. This led to a period of factionalism within the papacy as various groups vied for power and influence. One such group was the powerful Fraticelli movement, who advocated for radical reform within the church. Led by figures such as Pietro di Giovanni Olivi, the Fraticelli gained significant traction among the clergy and laity, posing a threat to Boniface's authority. The papacy responded by issuing edicts condemning the movement, but this only served to further exacerbate tensions between the papacy and secular powers. The appointment of bishops loyal only to Boniface sparked outrage among those who saw it as an attempt to undermine traditional authority within the papacy. This led to increased tensions between the papacy and secular powers, who began to question Boniface's legitimacy as a leader of Christendom. The issue came to a head when Boniface VIII issued a series of papal bulls that effectively limited the power of monarchs in Europe. Monarchs such as King Philip IV of France began to view Boniface's actions as a challenge to their authority, leading them to seek ways to limit his power. In 1302, Philip launched a campaign against Boniface, accusing him of heresy and attempting to undermine his authority. Thanks for listening to Underwire History. Look forward to seeing you next time.